In this video I'll be making braised beef tacos. I've never done exactly this before, so the recipe is a kind of experiment. I begin by preparing the meat. I remove some of the fat and cut it into manageable pieces. I do this early to make time for dry brining, which means I just add salt to the meat and let it sit for a while. It adds a good basic layer of flavor in my opinion. And in the fridge it goes. Another important preparation is to toast and grind the spices. This really wakes them up and gives a lot more flavor. In this dish I use coriander seeds, cumin seeds and oregano. I also use a couple of bay leaves, but they just go in as they are. The next part of this culinary adventure is the preparation of the braising liquid. It's common to use dried chilies here, but my grocery store didn't have any, so I used fresh ones instead. 3 chilies along with all the seeds. I then peel a bunch of garlic cloves and give them a rough chop. I do the same with 1 whole onion and the 3 tomatoes. I felt I also needed a few more garlic cloves. I then add a bunch of water to the blender and blend it into a smooth liquid. The meat has now been in the fridge for a few hours, and the color of it has darkened from absorbing the salt. I sear the meat at high heat until it gets a nice dark brown surface. I then add some tomato paste and let that cook for a minute. I add the blended braising liquid and scrape the bottom to release the brown layer that is built up during the sear. I add some store-bought meat stock and all the spices before stirring to combine everything. I bring it up to a boil, stir some more and give it a taste. Good, but needs a bit more meat stock. One thing to remember here is that the salt level should be low. As this cooks, the liquid will reduce and the percentage of salt will increase. One can always add more salt in the end if needed. I place my Dutch oven in the oven set to 160 degrees Celsius for about 5 hours. This was hotter and more time than necessary, so 150 degrees for about 4 hours would have been enough. For my sauce, I'm using roasted jalapeno and garlic blended with coriander, lime and avocado oil. I made this in my carnitas sandwich video and I'll put a link in the description. I'm tweaking it a bit this time by adding mayo, but I think it would have been nice as well and maybe even better without mayo. But only if you can handle spicy. The mayo takes some of the edge off. Now onto the complex and hard challenge of making tortillas. I'm using a recipe I've made a few times before as a guideline, and I'll put a link in the description for that as well. I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly how to make tortillas because I'm no expert to say the least, but I've learned a few things throughout the years. One thing is to know how the dough should feel when it's ready. It shouldn't be too dry and it shouldn't be too wet either. When the dough has rested for a while, it should be pretty easy to handle, nice and soft. I weigh each dough ball into 45 grams. I don't believe in adding extra flour if you're using a rolling pin to roll them out. I think it'll make them dry. I've heard people say you shouldn't use a tortilla press for wheat tortillas because the gluten prevents them from keeping their form. I disagree. I like wheat tortillas better than corn tortillas, and I don't mind the tortillas being a bit smaller and thicker. The most important thing I've learned from making tortillas a few times is to cover them directly after they're cooked. I usually put them in an oven dish covered by aluminum foil. I cover the dish after every single tortilla. This prevents them from drying out and will make them retain their softness. As you can see here, the meat is definitely very done, and as I previously stated, I think 150 degrees Celsius for about 4 hours would have been plenty. But this worked out just fine as well. I get some of that over-reduced braising liquid to keep it juicy. I then cover it to prevent it from drying out, and after a while it's time to taste it. Delicious, yes. It's finally time to assemble the tacos. I place 3 tortillas next to each other in this weird plastic sort of bowl. I fill them with the delicious beef. I give them a good drizzle of my jalapeno mayo. Top them with raw yellow onion and finish with a bit of lime juice. We're gonna need this. This. This was a very delicious taco. These were some of the best tacos I've ever made, and I'll definitely be making these again. This is really good. Yeah.